Thank you, Bo, and hello, everybody. Just a housekeeping addendum. I noticed that when I go into chat, it goes automatically to host and panelists, and I'm noticing a lot of people are posting to hosts and panelists, which is fine. But if you want everyone, you just have to check in the chat to make sure it's going to everyone. But I'm so excited to see so many of you from around the world today here talking about neurodivergent relationships and I've been a neurodivergent relationship therapist and coach for 32 years, even though I didn't have the word neurodivergent until, I don't know, the last 8 years maybe. But looking back, definitely all of my clients were neurodivergent or could have identified as neurodivergent, as do I. ADHD, autism, trauma, anxiety here, calling in from the United States. This is not a therapy session, although we need one. We can't do a big deep dive into trauma or collective trauma. But I think just being here in a group, kind of unifying around the globe, is an excellent way to heal and move through stress and trauma. But we're going to get into neurodivergent relationships, and I also want to say off the bat that neurodivergent is an identity, first of all, not a diagnosis, an identity that anyone who diverges from neuronormativity or society's idea of what is quote unquote normal, quote unquote right, quote unquote ideal can identify as. So this includes beyond ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, on and on. It includes traumatic brain injury. It includes epilepsy. It includes Down syndrome. It also includes any mental health challenge that ends in disorder, even though we as neurodivergent people reject the label of disorder. We often are assigned those labels, but that doesn't mean we have to identify with the disorder part of the label. So my lens is a non-pathologizing and non-stigmatizing lens. I have a strength-based and neurodiversity affirming approach. And I just want to say that I'm so glad to be here with you all talking about this right now. So, when we think about relationships, we are talking about dating, flirting, romantic relationships, sexual relationships, partnerships, marriages, but also relationships with ourself. And I believe that we can have affairs with ourselves and romances with ourselves. And I believe that being alone doesn't equal lonely. In fact, I heard the coolest quote the other day. This is from an autistic lens, perhaps more than other lenses, but it really spoke to me. And it was, my soul longs for connection, but my body longs for solitude. I don't know if that resonates with anyone else out there, but it speaks to the sensory needs and the emotional needs that we have that are sometimes different from what we imagined it would be, or different from what other people expect it will be. And sometimes we could want to be in partnership or dating or social. And then once we get there, we're like, nah, it turns out not. Like, turns out I'm not good with that in my body. So I just want to remember to keep coming back to that thought because we want to today talk about how we're going to honor our innateness and our boundaries around being with other people in any capacity, especially in romantic relationships. So if you're not in partnership, this is still for you because you are in partnership with yourself and you're in partnership with people no matter what, around in interacting with people around the world. So it's a lot about like how to people as well as how to be in romantic relationships and dating and flirting and sex. And we're going to definitely get into sex and intimacy, don't worry. So let's talk about loneliness for a second because I know a lot of us come to these relationship conversations with a feeling of loneliness. And in all transparency, the loneliest I've ever felt is in relationship with a person and like sleeping next to a person and feeling lonelier with them next to them and not connecting with them than when I was alone. So just the difference between loneliness and being alone. Because being alone or being solo or choosing to be solo or choosing to be single is not synonymous with loneliness. It can definitely coexist, but I just want to put that out there. That for many of us, we choose um, to be alone. Okay. So, interesting statistic that I think is going to be a lens for a lot of this conversation that always fascinates me, but no longer surprises me, that a third of millennials and half of Gen Z, and probably more of Gen Alpha, identify as neurodivergent and disabled, which includes a parent and non-a-parent, and at least a third identify LGBTQIA plus plus plus, right? Interestingly, for autistic people, 70%, up to 70%. These are, who knows how specific or accurate these statistics are, but they feel correct to me as working with people every day for 32 years, kind of behind the scenes as a therapist. 70% of autistic people identify as not straight or identify as LGBTQIA plus. And so this will be not only a neurodiversity affirming webinar, but a LGBTQIA and gender affirming webinar. So I'm going to talk about dating and flirting, which I just find funny because I'm pretty bad at flirting. I do not even recognize when somebody's flirting with me, and my friends think it's hilarious. So I personally cannot figure out if somebody is flirting with me or being kind to me. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but sometimes, and when I say as neurodivergent people, I'm including a broad scope of neurodivergent people. Um, and because my scope is ADHD autism, and I know for a lot of you, you identify with ADHD and or autism, those might be the primary neurotypes that I mention. So often for ADHD and autistic folks, it's hard to judge what somebody else is actually thinking or feeling. Whether it's that we can't read their feelings or they're just not being clear, like they're just not communicating clearly and accurately. I always say clear is kind. I would rather somebody say, like, hi, I know we just met, but I'm definitely not into you and I'll definitely never want to date you. I would so much rather that than somebody just kind of going through the motions of niceties and making me think it's one thing and not another. I have been known to say, is this a date? Like, are we dating now? Was yesterday a date? Are we in a relationship? I ask awkward questions all the time, and I wonder if any of you do because you need extra clarity, extra parameters, extra rules, extra structure to understand the relationship or the potential of a relationship. Often, if we know that we're the kind of people who do misread or misinterpret cues, it keeps us from going out or keeps us from wanting to date or attempting to flirt because we don't want to be misinterpreted or mischaracterized, and we sometimes struggle with that with other people. And so I would encourage you to continue to try, but maybe let people know with transparency. I know it's vulnerable and often scary, but when you feel safe enough to let people know that you prefer clarity and you would prefer honesty over like people pleasing because it can get confusing. So everyone's going to have a different way of communicating with others, and knowing what your boundaries are around that. And I have to say that I've become more transparent and just like outwardly awkward and weird in some people's eyes as I've gotten older because I'm just like, I don't have time or maybe energy or capacity or spoons anymore to figure out these social norms or these neurotypical games. I'm just going to check in really quick with the chat every once in a while because I'm seeing are you still having trouble hearing me a little bit? Because my mic is not covered. I want to make sure everyone's hearing me.
It is great
Um,
now. I think there was a paper on there or something. All good.
oh, yeah,
Yes.
there were papers on it. Oh, darn. Were you able to hear everything I just said?
Yeah, it was just a little bit
Okay.
muted, but all good. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm reading that a lot of people identify this with this, and not knowing where you stand is the worst. Um, Bo shared that sharing some of how I communicate in dating app bios, a shy being, and finding people in real life is hard, but it's so nice to just put it out there on the app so people know from the get-go. Yeah. Yeah. Like putting out on the profile, you know, who you are, what you like, what you're about. I think that is so relieving, and it does kind of filter through folks who maybe aren't ready for such um, honesty and clarity. Um, so when we do go out on a date, it's interesting because we have not just we though. When I say we, not just us as people, as individuals, or just me, have access needs and support needs and sensory needs. So go figure, it's not just us who's awkward maybe and has a lot of needs that we need accommodated for on a date, but the other person too. Because sometimes we come in with a lot of anxiety, knowing that we have a lot of access and support and sensory needs. And then we kind of forget that the other person might be experiencing something similar. So when you're going out on a date, I love to think of this through the lens of access intimacy, which this is not just true for romantic relationships. This is true for any relationship you're in. I love this idea of access intimacy, where you share your access needs, support needs, sensory needs, preferences, and then that liberates the other person to do the same. You share vulnerably, they're more likely to share vulnerably. You share what you need, kind of gives them permission to share what they need without feeling like they're being too much, just like we sometimes probably feel when we ask for something, or we say, I really don't want to go to that place, or these lights are too loud, or how many times have we changed, tables in a restaurant because there was something that was uncomfortable or felt unsafe or felt distracting, right? And so that's hard to do if we don't share that access intimacy with the other person. If we feel like we're always the ones to be asking for something, that's awkward too. So I have a client whose family walks on eggshells around her, because if she's unhappy, nobody's happy, or if she's uncomfortable, nobody's comfortable. And so they're like, "What do you want to do?" "No, it's okay. We'll do whatever you want to do." Well, like, is this the right temperature? Are these the right lights? Is this the right food? And she doesn't like it either. She doesn't like that dynamic of being the one who everyone's walking on eggshells around. She appreciates that they're listening to her and caring about her and accommodating her. But I think if it's a reciprocal conversation, it feels better on all sides. Um, uh, I have somebody saying, I have some thoughts and experiences regarding communication I'd want to elaborate on a bit later if that would be okay. Yes, I don't know if we're opening up the mics, or if you, I don't think we are. So if you want to, for the person who said that, write more extensively about that. Oh, a thought and text. Perfect, perfect. Absolutely, absolutely. So letting your partners and people know that clear is kind, and keeping that idea of access intimacy in mind. There's also, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, pebbling. And this is good for flirting, and flirting in romantic relationships, but also flirting in friendships. Like, we could be romantic and not sexual with our friends, right? Or maybe we're romantic and sexual with our friends. But the idea of pebbling and like gifting things to another person to show them that we care is, I think, just a really sweet ritual. Apparently, penguins share pebbles with each other as a sign of adoration, and love. And so I would love to be able to, for instance, give my friends and my partners gifts every day, but that sounds expensive, right? And also on a capacity level, like to send something, or to buy something and give something, it's just a lot of energy. So one of the ways that I pebble with friends that might be useful for you all is, if I'm walking down the street and I see a fantastic pair of boots that are just so cool and fun, I'll take a photograph of the item, in this hypothetical, the boots, and then I'll send them to my friend, and they love funky boots. And so I'll just say, saw these boots, thought of you. Would I love to give them boots? Yes. Would I love to buy everything I see that would be nice for my friends? Yes. But you know what? These photographs that we're exchanging, like saw this and would love for you to have it one day, or saw this and thought of you. It's just a sweet way to pebble for free. Hopefully that helps somebody out there. Because gift giving is just so fun. Somebody else is mentioning, I feel that it's hard to communicate the nuances of my sensory needs, especially when meeting or dating somebody new. Yeah, that is tricky when initially, when you don't know the person and you don't know yet if it's safe. And if we struggle with reading the room, we struggle with reading somebody else's cues, sometimes we don't know right away if it is safe. So I usually start with something small. Like I don't go right for the most vulnerable thing. I might say, these, um, I can't hear you over the screen or the TV that's playing, or the music is too loud. Like something that's very neutral, and then testing out to see how they respond. Or in making plans, I'll say that would be a fun thing to do. I'd prefer something more quiet, or something where there's not as many crowds, or something more lively, because of course it's not just hypersensitivity, it's hyposensitivity sometimes that we feel. Um, so maybe starting with things that are a little bit more neutral and a little less uh, vulnerable, and then see how they respond to those requests, and then see if that helps you determine. Yeah. Oh, good. Somebody else was mentioning pebbling. Um, and then, as you said, Bo, the benefits of online dating, to be able to kind of put it out there without the energy of the other person, and then just knowing that when you get there, that unfortunately those people online and the things they say online might not be in alignment with how you feel in the actual energy of them in their presence. And so to trust your gut, and to trust your instincts, and to trust the signals your body gives you. And they might not be the neurotypical signals. It might be you get a dry mouth, or a tummy ache, or you just don't feel tingly when you see that person. Like there might be just someone in interesting, nuanced, unique ways that you feel in your body when something or someone is aligned. And then likewise, things that you feel in your body and that you embody when something or someone is not aligned with you. Yeah. Um, I do want to mention rejection sensitivity, dysphoria. I don't love the D, the dysphoria. I'd love to drop the D from so many labels, including RSD. So rejection sensitivity is a human experience. A lot of people, especially apparently ADHDers, experience rejection sensitivity at a deeper level. And this is when you feel physical and emotional pain from perceived or actual rejection. Um, and sometimes we perceive it to be more than it is. So if somebody makes a comment, which for them might seem neutral, and you take it as a criticism or judgment or rejection, you might feel and experience a very deep level of physical and emotional pain, so much so that you want to escape the situation, or not see or talk to that person ever again. You might experience rejection sensitivity when you go online and you see that your friends are all out partying, or that your partner is doing something else and didn't tell you, and then you might turn that into meaning something bigger than it is. For example, if you see that your partner went to a concert and didn't invite you, right? Does that mean that your partner someone has other friends, or potentially other partners, or potentially just wanted to go by themselves? Or does that mean that your relationship is over and you're unlovable? Because sometimes with rejection sensitivity, we see something or experience something, and then we quickly jump to catastrophizing, or to worst case scenario, or to rumination, or intrusive thought. So notice if you tend to do this. Notice if you tend to make something mean that you're unlovable, or make something mean that you should break up right away or make something mean, that you should always be alone, right? If you experience that rejection, does it happen right away? And does it and does it happen even when it isn't said to you, if it's when it's perceived as well? And I don't believe that RSD is all physical. Like I've heard a lot of research, excuse me, that says that it's something that medication could help and that it's not trauma based. And the jury is out on this because I believe that we have, as neurodivergent people, experienced many, many traumas, including many rejections, including judgments and expectations in a neurotypical world. And so we've learned from those that we do sometimes get rejected, that we have been rejected before. And then we start people pleasing to avoid further rejection. And as we people please to avoid further rejection, we start to burn out and we exhaust ourselves. And when we burn out and exhaust ourselves, then we sometimes retreat, sometimes isolate, or sometimes that leads to further rejection, which perpetuates the insidious cycle. So I think about the RSD cycle as being real traumas, real experiences, people pleasing, burnout, and then isolation or rejection. Does that make, I hope that makes sense. But there's also apparently medications that some people have used. Blood pressure, interestingly, medications that I can't remember the name of at the moment. Dr. Dodson talks about this a lot, that they've found reduce the impacts of RSD or rejection sensitivity. Because of the wide variety of relationship structures, I do want to explore the idea of open relationships and ethical non-monogamous relationships and asexuality, because of course we're not all having, straight hetero monogamous relationships. So I want to make sure that we address this as well. And okay, I'm not maybe Bo, you can help with the longer comments so that maybe in a summary or something towards the end that I can help with. And yes, beta blockers, and I can't recall the medication, but somebody's mentioning propranolol. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right. Sometimes the medications, like acronyms, just confuse me in the names. Um, so open relationships and ethical non-monogamous I'm seeing this more often than not. In fact, the most common scenario that I'm hearing, and I'm in the States, so it might be different culturally here, and I mainly work with midlife neurodivergent couples, is a married or previously monogamous couple in midlife, one or both identifying as neurodivergent, who have outgrown the relationship or outgrown each other and wanting to open up the relationship or explore ethical non-monogamy as a way to not replace but expand upon, and not replace but supplement, and have like other creative outlets and other sexual and intimate outlets, because one person does not always meet all of our needs. I really love the work of Esther Perel, who's, I believe, from Belgium, a relationship coach who talks about this, where it's unrealistic to think that for our whole life, if we did partner young, that same person that we partnered young with is going to meet all of our needs as we get older. And these are, social needs, physical needs, emotional needs, sexual needs, and whatnot. And so it is very common to see people start to either leave relationships or expand their relationships or open their relationships or explore ethical non-monogamy and many partners, potentially, as their relationship grows or as they age. And so I'm seeing that more often than not. I'm also seeing, and this is more economical perhaps, but a lot of people living together platonically as co-parents, maybe on paper married, but not in romantic relationship with their previous spouses or partners anymore, but still living together because it's less expensive to share one home and more convenient to co-parent together, and also sharing health insurance and some other logistics like that. So I'm definitely seeing that trend. also talking to a lot of people who are identifying as asexual and really embracing that term. In fact, I just met with somebody the other day, um, ADHD, autistic and ADHD, and and she didn't realize that asexuality was under the LGBTQIA umbrella, and it was the cutest thing. She's like, I'm queer. She's like, wait a minute, I'm asexual. I don't like sex. I can be queer. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. Like I was explaining what queer is and just like the scope of it. And that asexuality does not mean that you don't want to, that you don't like people, that you don't want to connect with people, that you don't want to be romantic with people. Asexuality could be just as romantic, but maybe not as sexual. And some asexual people want sex sometimes too. And so anyhow, it's just that it's really cool to expand our awareness and just be open to exploring different identities and knowing that they'll change. I was straight and neurotypical, I thought, for the first 50 years of my life. And now I definitely identify as neurodivergent and queer. And I'm still with the same partner, and he's a little confused, but like we're still living together and co-parenting together, but we have different bedrooms, right? There's so many different ways to do this. And I meet couples who live who have separate bedrooms for sure, live in different houses and they're together. I'm the happiest couples I know have different houses in different cities. And then they get together on weekends to date and explore and play and experience intimacy. So just know that there's so many ways to structure and create a relationship that works for you and your partner. That's the neurodivergent way, releasing ourselves from neurotypical expectations and standards. Boundaries are very important, of course, as is consent. If you are considering opening up your relationship or exploring ethical non-monogamy, it's interesting that the couples that I work with that want to experience ethical non-monogamy, opening up with their relationships or kink, have the strongest communication skills. They're clear in their communication, they're clear in their boundaries, they're clear in their consent and their intentions. And there's so much communication prior to any intimacy with other people. And even during, a lot of people hesitate to talk to their partner or partners during sex, but that's, it's not necessarily ineffective to have a conversation. Just be like, I thought I was into it. Turns out I'm not. I was feeling this before. Now I'm not. And choosing partners who will respect that, who will pivot in the moment. So I know there used to be this saying as a therapist, I was taught this and I so disagree, that like the time to talk about sex is not during sex, or the time to talk about sex is not right after sex. I think that's interesting. To me, that's very limited in its scope. But I'd be curious to know what you all think. Um, so managing sensory needs, both in and out of the bedroom, is certainly important to discuss with your partner. And sensory needs, sometimes we talk about them and we only think about environmentally, is the fan too loud or the lights too bright? Is the room too hot or too cold? On and on. But some people have a very strong sense of smell, for example. So I personally would not be able to be intimate with somebody who had ever been around smoke or has smoked cigarette smoke or cigar smoke, because I have an allergy to it, but I'm also really sensitive to it. And mold, like we're not ever going to have sex or intimacy in any place that has mold, and we're also not going to go out to dinner or to a theater or to anywhere that has mold. And so that's a high sensory need for me that often limits me, but is priority for me, for my safety and comfort. So you might have something, a sensory need that And if you think through like your five senses, sometimes it's interesting to notice because it could be touch, it could be tactile, it could be that you like strong touch, it could be that you really dislike very soft touch and that you need firm touch. These are sensory needs as well, the sensory needs we have with people in intimacy. And just notice what they are, recognize them in yourself so that you can communicate them clearly with your friends, with your partners, and with your and with yourself too. Like I had a therapist, I'm just sharing everything because that's what I do, bonus. I had a sex therapist and they recommended what is it called? They recommended I just think about pleasure outside of sex. Like they were like, well, when you hold a towel, notice if you like the texture. When you brush your hair, notice if you like the sensation. When you're in the shower, do you notice what temperature water you most enjoy? So there's this sensate focus, I believe is what they called it, of noticing how your body responds to different sensations. And outside of sex and intimacy, noticing that so that you can better understand yourself and communicate with yourself and your partner or partners what feels good and what does not. Because we know it's not just the act of sex that we're doing. We're doing a whole lot prior. There's a joke that sometimes a lot of my clients say that they say like sex starts the night before with the dishes. So if you're living with somebody and they're helping around the house and there's equity and there's equality and there's respect, that's like foreplay. Not sexy, but it works, like a clean dishes can be foreplay. And so just noticing for yourself what helps you get into the frame of mind where you're able to enjoy any level of intimacy. There's somebody coming in talking about communication thoughts. To me, it does not matter when we communicate needs. It could be before, during, after, or 2 months from the event. Very cool. All that matters is that we're able to communicate through the communication to understand one another better and feel seen, heard, respected, and appreciated. That's beautiful. Yes, that mutual respect and appreciation is so important. I love that. Somebody else is asking, do you have any tips to manage RSD from a well-being non-medication perspective to minimize its impact? Um, yes. So with RSD, if you feel confident in your and clear about your identity and your needs, as we're talking about now, your access, your support, your sensory needs, if you feel internally confident about your identity, your integrity, your truth, you're less likely to receive mischaracterizations, receive judgments, receive rejections. Um, I call this neurobelonging. It's a term that I coined because we walk around life feeling like other people don't understand us, feeling misunderstood, feeling mischaracterized, feeling judged, and then we feel like we don't belong. We don't belong with this person, we don't belong in this space. But if we can belong to ourselves, if we can know for certain who we are, no matter what other people say or think or do, then we can belong anywhere because we're there, because we belong to ourselves. Um, that takes practice and time to get to that place. We're going to be talking about that in detail when we talk about holidays and family because that comes up. It definitely comes up often with family, that kind of need to like stand strong in our own knowing, in our own belonging. Um, oh, and there's a couple questions in the question box. This year, I have decentralized romantic relationship and have found myself having higher expectations for my friendships when it comes to support through loneliness. Yes. It's been difficult to accept that others choose romantic partners over friendship due to my decentralizing romance and prioritizing community. How can I start releasing these expectations or asking friends to recognize accountability when support requests are not being met? Yes, so what I'm understanding is that you're decentralizing romantic relationships, prioritizing friendships, telling your friends that you're lonely and expressing to your friends that you're choosing friendship over romantic partners for now, but then others choose sometimes the romantic partners over friendship. And if I understand correctly, you want to understand how to kind of release these expectations. This is going to sound perhaps oversimplified, but there's like a bigger message underneath these words. Um, Let them like if there are people in your lives that are choosing to have romantic relationships and prioritizing those over friendship, like that's their journey. So we need to let them have their journey, just like we want them to let us have our journey. Um, and chapters close and relationships evolve and friendships change. And sometimes we hold on too tight to people who need space or people who aren't served by our friendship anymore, even if we feel like we are. And sometimes we're not served by the friendships and relationships that we hold on too tight for out of fear of loneliness and rejection. Um, there's a lot more to say about that, but I feel like agency comes up for me in the sense of offering other people agency to do what they need to do and want to do with their lives because we so much want agency to do the same for ourselves and for other people to respect that and honor that. I understand there's many emotional layers under that question that I didn't address because loneliness is hard and feeling like all of your friends focusing on romantic relationships when you're focusing on the friendship just it's hard, it hurts, I understand. um, but if you were um, forcing it doesn't isn't the right word I want to say, but if you were like leaning into it harder than they were wanting to receive it, it's not going to be successful and it's not going to lead you into the friendships that you would want. Somebody is asking, the guy I'm seeing told me he doesn't know how to flirt. I'm not that great at flirting either, so I don't mind because we have a great time together, but I'm worried that the lack of polarity will stop me from being attracted to him in the long run. So this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of couples that I work with that resist scripts, but sometimes I'll work with couples who are just like, this is how I like to be flirted with. Say this. Some people don't want a script because they'll feel like, oh, well, that's contrived. If my partner says, I'm here for you, I've got you, no matter what, I'm by your side. If they know that that's a script, it doesn't feel right. For some people, they're like, no, I actually just need to hear those words. I need to hear the words you got me. I need to hear the words I'm here for you. I need to hear the words I love you. And some people need a script, and maybe your partner's like this, where they're bad at flirting. They might also not know the words. I work with a lot of people who are like, I don't know the words to use. My heart is like, I love you. I want to be with you. I want you. And they're like, I don't know how to say it. I don't have the words. And of course, I can't give them the words because those are the words that I understand and want to hear. But somebody else, their partner, and say, this is what I need to hear. This is what flirting looks like to me. This is what flirting feels like to me. This would be fun for you to say. This would be interesting to hear. And so I would just lean into really being clear with people about what you want and what you need to hear and what you enjoy and what you prefer and what lights you up and what turns you on. Um, Oh, good. I'm glad you're gaining a lot from this. Somebody's asking, can you recommend any good books that talk more about the kinds of things you're talking about today? Um, One is I'm writing one right now with Dr. Nick Walker. Dr. Nick Walker wrote Neuroqueering Heresies, which is a fantastic book. But we're writing together a book on neurodivergent relationships. So there is that within the year that is coming out. I really love Esther Perel. She doesn't identify as neurodivergent. She doesn't even really talk about neurodivergence, but like spot on relationship advice. Um, there's also Melissa Orlov, Orlov, who talks a lot about neurodivergent women experience, and sometimes she talks about relationships, a little bit more maybe ADHD focused. Um, not as like broad scope neurodivergence. But Melissa Orlov is a relationship therapist that I've read some good things about. Um, I'm scanning my brain. I'm scanning my brain. Uh, okay, that's all I'm coming up with in the moment. Um, and I'm Oh, and there was a question that I missed before. My ADHD partner would like to somewhat settle down and lead a more calm life. Yeah. We are 40. I have some ADHD traits. How could I offer a calming effect to my partner without patronizing her or neglecting her bubbly personality? This is a new relationship. How to help my partner to concentrate without giving a feeling of controlling her behavior. Okay, so you know that your partner would like a calmer environment. It sounds like you maybe don't always want to uh, calmer environment. I think it's beautiful that you're recognizing that about her, and I think it's beautiful that you don't want to control behavior. Um, Asking the person, I say this often, like ask the person what is calming to them because it's so interesting. Neurotypically, calm means quiet, meditation, yoga, sit on the beach with a book and look at the water. I'm saying this sarcastically because these things do not calm me. Like doing this calms me. It grounds me because I'm aligned with like teaching and helping. For some people, dancing in a loud room might feel calming. For some people, lifting weights feels calming. And for other people, lying down on the floor with a cozy blanket and a dog on their belly feels calming, right? And so never making assumptions and always asking the person, um, what they mean by calm, what calms them, how could you create an environment that calms them? Um, just really good questions. I always think like neuro-inclusive questions, right? About preferences and about needs, and really not even focusing on if there's a diagnosis. It doesn't really matter what the diagnosis or label or self-discovery label is, right? Or identity even. It's like, what are your needs? What are your access needs? What are your sport needs? What are your sensory needs? What are your preferences? What lights you up? I feel like those questions are more inclusive. Um, and that can translate, by the way, into any relationship or even workplaces. But that's a whole other topic. I hope I didn't miss other questions, and Bo, feel free to holler if I did. So I do want to talk specifically about sex and intimacy. I know we've already talked about it a lot, like making sure that you're in access intimacy, sharing your needs. And interestingly, referring to like kink, some people hyposensitive, some people hypo or hypersensitive need very strong, firm touch, need a lot of sensation. Other people will not respond well to strong or firm touch and a lot of sensation. Um, there was a Netflix show out a while ago, like how to make a sex room. And every single sex room was like leather couches and whips and chains and blindfolds. And it was like a dark room and like a dungeon. I'm like, hell no. Like, I was like, no, no, none of that. Like, I need a fire extinguisher, safety first. I need some cozy blankets. I need a window. Right? So everybody has their own preferences and their own kinks. My kink is clarity. My kink is accuracy. That is not sexy to most people. My kink is safety. I'll sometimes tell the people I'm dating. They're like, "All right, well that's not me." I'm like, "Great. Then we're not aligned." Somebody just say this is an interesting show. This is like therapeutic comedy right now. Um, Yes. So just making sure that there's conversation and mutual respect. Like one person's not right or wrong. I think I'm right. Doesn't mean I am right. This is the reality. This is my reality, right? If you're in partnership with someone or people, every single person in that relationship has a different reality. Every single person in that relationship has different needs, and every single person might think they're right. Like their needs make sense, like their preferences make sense. And so often the conflicts couples and partners have is is the assumption that their way is the way, and why can't the other person just get on board? Like, literally, the amount of times I talk to couples and the argument is how somebody loads a dishwasher would surprise you. Like, there's like one person who has a way of loading the dishwasher and thinks that is the right way and the effective way and the efficient way, and another person who's like, I don't care. I don't care. Then you do the dishes. There's also a really cool saying that Esther Perel says, in a relationship, there's always one person who's afraid to be left, and there's always one person who's afraid to lose themselves. Okay, I'll let that sit. I'm going through my notes here and I'm making sure I got everything. I didn't talk specifically about parent-child relationships, but I'll just say that sometimes what happens in a relationship is one person takes on a parental type role, not that they are the parent and the other is the child, because it's a partnership. One partner takes on a parental role or tone of needing to micromanage, needing to be in charge of everything. Maybe they're the one who has all the lists to do, or does all the planning, or does all the initiating. And sometimes the other partner is in the child role and feels like they can't do anything right, that they're always being judged or shamed. And by the way, neither of the partners likes these roles. Nobody wants to be in the parent role, nobody wants to be in the child role, but that parent-child dynamic exists often. And I'll say, especially if one partner is ADHD. I know that's generalized, but often if there are struggles with organization or time management or executive functioning, that sometimes leads to that dynamic because the other person feels like they have to kind of do everything or make sure it's being done. Yeah.
I
Uh,
have a
yeah.
question in the chat to
Hey.
that I'm gonna summarize, but basically, like, how do you handle and cope and take care of yourself and learn or like and wanna like put yourself out there again when you've had like hard, challenging, and like very unaffirming experiences with dating and romance? Yeah.
Yeah. It's so tricky because I know my answer isn't going to be everybody else's answer. In those moments, I lean into relentless self-care, making sure I know who I am and what I want and what I need, and what is pleasurable or erotic to me so that I can better meet people and feel that alignment with people when I meet them. And then leaning into uh, friendships and the idea of romantic friendships, like allowing your heart to open in safe spaces, because if you've been hurt before, you might not want to jump right into intimate relationships because that's another level of vulnerability just in our bodies, right? And so leaning into friendships and loving on them, like loving on them and allowing your heart to open and receiving love and like asking for help and receiving help and sharing yourself in that way and allowing yourself to unmask again and feel safe, trusting yourself, trusting your instincts and trusting your body before entering into a more vulnerable relationship. And then when you're ready to enter into a more intimate relationship with a person or people, um, being so clear about what you want and what you need with yourself and them. Like just not compromising on your safety and on your needs. Um, that's what's coming up to me in the moment. Were there other questions I missed, Bo?
I don't think so, and if you did, please resend them to me. Thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to like read through them as I was going. And the other topic that we didn't get to is confidence, and that might kind of play into this. But part of confidence outside of knowing yourself is celebrating small wins. And so I have so many clients who will say, "I'm just not doing this dating thing right. Relationships are hard for me. I just don't people well. Um, I don't really feel lovable." And then I'll start to talk to them, and the amount of care and compassion they exhibit with their children, their friends, their animals in their lives, their pets, um, family members, and how lovable they are, or how much they're surrounded by love and respect, and how their capacity to love is so great. And I feel like this sometimes comes back to the rejection sensitivity, is like we focus on the times that don't work, and we focus on the things that aren't working so often, and we spotlight the relationships that didn't feel good, and we spotlight the relationships that made us feel bad about ourselves, or that one thing that person said that day 10 years ago that we're still holding on to, um, or that one breakup that's keeping us from dating or loving again. And I would encourage you to spotlight the small wins, spotlight the celebrations, spotlight what's going well, spotlight what feels good, because I think sometimes we default to the negative, and I think sometimes we get like we run away with those thoughts, and they start to spiral, and we start to ruminate on them, like, why did they say that? What does that mean? What does that mean about me? What does that mean about us? And trying to train your brain to stay and pause in the moments that things are going well, and stay and pause in the moments where your friends or other people show respect, show care, and love on you well. Um, and I know that's like leaning into gratitude, but I also think it's like leaning into celebration. I think we're not always great with celebration, and I think sometimes we resist sometimes what brings us pleasure. I talk to a lot of clients who feel sometimes guilty feeling leisure or pleasure because there's pain in the world, and because there's pain in other people and other people they're in partnership with. Um, and that's very empathetic and very intuitive, that to feel that compassion. And yet, in terms of like uh, resist, almost advocacy for ourselves, like allowing ourselves to feel pleasure, allowing ourselves to celebrate, allowing ourselves to brag, allowing ourselves to say like, I am smart, I am intelligent, I am funny, I am lovable, I am sexy, like allowing yourself to step into those more positive and light and affirming spaces, and notice how much attention you're putting on the things that aren't going well. Was there anything else, Bo, that came up that I missed?
I don't think so, other than the last chat question. Yes.
Were we able to summarize the longer text? Did we already do that?
Yes. Yeah, we did.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Um, yeah, somebody's asking if there'll be a link and able to rewatch, and I believe so. Oh, the parent-child dynamic one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the last one. Um, I can understand, they're saying, I can understand why it happens though when frustration builds. Any tips for how to get out of this dynamic? Yeah, it's really hard, and it's almost every couple I see. It's fascinating. And again, nobody wants to be in either position. So this is going to go back to a little bit of the let them. But in my relationship, for example, I am the initiator, the planner, the doer, did you do this? I'm just making sure you did that. I know I said to do it, but did you do it? I know you said you did it. Did you do it? Like my list, their list is now my to-do list, which means my to-do list is twice as long. So there's exhaustion in that. There's also a bit of control. Somebody else mentioned, like, how do I not control somebody? There's a way that I think things should be done, right? And if I'm holding on to, or if you're holding on to, this is the way to do it, this is the way things to be done, this is the amount of time it should be to plan something, this is how far in advance I need to know something, this is the effective way, this is the right way. If notice how much you're saying that if that's your narrative, and how much you're putting those expectations on the other person. So there's that. Also, if the other person that you're partnered with is not managing their own lives, their neurodivergence, their needs, if they're not asking for help, if they're not trying new systems, if they're not exploring medication, if they think that would help, if they're not eating well or moving their body ever or doing good things for themselves, that's a problem, right? Then you are taking on a lot of the emotional and everything toll. So sometimes I'll say, sometimes it's an explanation and sometimes it's an excuse. If somebody's saying, well, I can't do anything and I can't be on time ever and I can't follow through with anything because I'm ADHD, right? That's an excuse. Uh, if if there's explanations as to why things are more challenging, that makes sense. I should never balance our checkbook ever. I should never do taxes by myself. I know my limitations and my capacity with numbers. So it's an explanation, not an excuse. But if I'm just like, I'm not gonna even think about money or deal with money or help with money at all, like then that's kind of leaning into it more as an excuse. So I talk to couples about and partners about, do they feel like the other person is putting in effort? Do they feel like the other person is trying to help themselves and help the relationship? Because sometimes only one person is, and that is a conflict for sure. But we can't change another person's innateness. If you're partnered with somebody who's messy or forgetful or tells really long stories with circular thinking and doesn't get to the point very quickly, for example, they're always going to be that way. Like you're not going to change them and you shouldn't, right? So there's just like this interesting conversation about what's innate, what's never going to change. Are you okay with that? What are your non-negotiables? And what can you let go of? What can you be like, this is not the way I would do it, but I'm going to let you do it that way. And I'm not going to hold on to so much anger and frustration and resentment about it. That brings a lot more peace to partnership. I hope that answered your question. Anything out there, Bo? Coming in for questions or comments? I know I could just go for like 3 hours, but I probably should. Oh, and if anybody needs any extra support, of course, my name is Pasha Marlowe. My website is pashamarlowe.com. I do offer coaching with individuals and couples. So yeah, happy to help in that way as well, more specifically.
Perfect. Yeah. And I mean, we're technically almost at time, but if there's any last questions, just like also if we missed anything, two neurodivergent people hosting this session, please just put it in the chat one more time and we'll make sure to get to it. And then otherwise, like Pasha said, they are very gorgeous therapist and coach and offer one-on-one sessions. So please reach out to them. And then there's another session on all things navigating the holidays, which I'm really excited for. That is always like a really draining time for me. And you're so welcome to join. That is also free. And I'm just going to put the link in the chat really quick. Beep, beep,
Yep,
boop.
and I'm noticing there's an object and relationship impermanence question that I'll definitely speak to at that holiday one. And then also, I guess there was an unanswered question that I believe is the about divorce and getting back to the dating scene, which I would probably offer the same excuse, same answer as I did with how to return to the dating scene for that the other person asked in terms of knowing yourself before you jump into another relationship and allowing your heart to open with safe people that are like friends first. But yeah, the holiday call is going to talk a lot about relationships with family and friends and the dynamics there as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. These sessions always like fly by. I feel like that was like 10 minutes.
Right.
Um,
Same.
if you like this format and if you want to have more of these kinds of sessions, please let me know. It is, yeah, it makes it a whole lot easier to advocate for more of these kinds of sessions if people share positive feedback. If you have any other kind of feedback, constructive feedback, anything, I believe the second you close out of this call, you're going to get a little Zoom form. You're also welcome to just write me an email. I'm Bo at tiimo.dk, beep, beep, boop. And like I said, you're going to get the recording in your inbox tomorrow. There's no slides this time, as you've seen. But yeah, you'll get the recording, and I'll also make sure to share all of Pasha's links so you can follow them and book a call, all that good stuff. So all of that will be in your inbox sometime tomorrow. And yeah, any parting words from you, Pasha?
Gosh,
No pressure.
yeah. Yeah, right. Wait, how do you wrap this up? I would wrap it up with ask the person, don't make assumptions, and to honor your innateness and not apologize for it.
I cry. Amazing. Thank you all so much. I wish you a gorgeous rest of your day. Wait, let me stop this.